Hello guys, welcome to the answer writing session. So here I'll be giving you a question and then we will discuss the answer for that. But remember, this is a revision session. It won't be a complete theoretical discussion. So here is a question that is related to development of underdevelopment that I hope already you might have covered this. So this is a question. You need to criticize or critically analyze Andre Gunder Frank's development of underdevelopment. Okay, so if you see the structure will be, you need to explain the concept, what is a development of underdevelopment. Then you need to criticize. And when we talk about critical analysis, you talk about the relevance also towards the end. But before you criticize, you can talk about some contribution as well. So that is going to be the structure of your answer. Okay, so now take a moment, think about this, and you can start. Now, guys, before we start, in case if you're looking for a test series or mentorship program, or the course, you can check out the details in the description. If you want the PDF that is already available and which is free of cost, you can download it. The details are given in the description. So if you see this topic, criticizing, Andre Gunder Frank's development of underdevelopment, you need to give an introduction, right? So this theory, A.G. Frank's theory of development of underdevelopment, is a foundational critique of global capitalism and its role in perpetuating inequalities between the developed, that is a center, and the underdeveloped, that is a periphery. That means he's talking about developed as the core and the periphery countries, which is underdeveloped. And his analysis challenges the modernization theory, which in fact views underdevelopment as a transitional stage, and instead, he's talking about that underdevelopment is a result of historical and systemic exploitation, which is rooted in capitalism. So let's get into this and we'll try to understand the core argument. If you look at the core argument, this is what we need to stress on again before we go into the critical analysis part. Underdevelopment is not due to, archaic institutions or capital shortages, but it's actually a product of the historical process of global capitalism. And the capitalist system that enforces a rigid international division, that is, creating an international division of labor, and that exploit the periphery for cheap labor, and they get the developed will get the cheap labor, they get the raw material, and they also get the surplus capital, and that benefit the developed or the center. So they exploit the periphery for the cheap labor, raw material, surplus capital, etc., and they benefit, the developed will benefit by exploiting the underdeveloped. Now, if you look at the key features, there is a dependency relationship, comparative advantage doctrine is there, and exploitation through resource allocation. Guys, all these things we discussed in the class, so there won't be enough time for us to, because that is one complete session. Here we are going to discuss this answer in 7 to 10 minutes. The way you're going to write answer is what we are going to discuss here. We may not be able to something which I'm discussing in one line, maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs. Okay, so when we talk about dependency relationship, the economies of dependent states that are oriented towards serving the dominant states, right? And whose economic interest rather than their own. So the dependent state that you're talking about, this underdeveloped and developing, their so we were talking about dependency relationship. Now the comparative advantage doctrine, right? So dependent states are in fact trapped in the roles that reinforce their underdevelopment by focusing on primary goods production, and that is leaving them vulnerable to global market fluctuations. So this we have already discussed in detail. And coming to the exploitation through resource allocation, we can say resource in fact flow into dependent states but are allocated in ways that benefit the dominant state. And that is again perpetuating that inequality. If you look at the historical context, again, Frank draws upon historical examples of colonization and post-colonial exploitation also, and that he's emphasizing that the global capitalist system create and sustain the underdevelopment. Now, what are the criticisms? So when you talk about the criticism, you can talk about neoliberal critique, and you can talk about modernization perspective. You can bring in the benefits of colonialism. You can talk about this as overgeneralization and lack of class analysis, zero-sum perspective. All these dimensions, which we have already discussed in the class, you can bring in into the criticism. So if you look at the neoliberal critique, neoliberals argue that informal factors like corruption, governance failures, and the mismanagement are more significant causes of underdevelopment than the external exploitation. And Paul Colley's and bottom billion thesis. So this we have already discussed, and See, here he is talking about factors like civil wars, ethnic tensions, and geographical challenges, like landlocked countries, are equally critical in explaining underdevelopment. So these are the factors that you need to talk about more than the other external exploitation that you are talking about. That's a bottom billion thesis, Paul Colliers. Okay, the modernization perspective. The modernists refute the idea that isolation from global capitalism is a viable solution, right? They're pointing to the failure of communist models in Russia and Eastern Europe. So in fact, these models also have failed. So there is no question about talking about this communist model. But in fact, this is not actually the communism that Marx has talked about. That's different. Again, countries like South Korea and Taiwan have developed rapidly through capitalist models and engagement with the global economy. And that is again challenging Frank's assertion that integration into global capitalism always lead to underdevelopment. No, that's not the case. If you take those examples, that's not the case. Now, there are benefits of colonial Goldthorpe. You can mention, noted that colonized countries like India gained the infrastructure like transportation, railway, communication systems, which were absent in non-colonized states like Ethiopia. Okay, and this in fact complicates Frank's argument that colonialism solely led to exploitation without offering any developmental advantage. So this is another criticism which you can mention. Then related to overgeneralization, you can say Frank theory often homogenizes the periphery and failing to account for internal class structures and regional variation within the underdeveloped nations. Then you can talk about Laclau's critique. Many peripheral countries that operate with non-capitalist modes of production but are integrated into a capitalist global economy. And Frank's classification of these countries are fully capitalist is an oversimplification. Then lack of class analysis, that's another criticism. If you see, Frank gives minimal consideration to class as a unit of analysis, and the role of domestic elites in perpetuating the underdevelopment is underexplored, despite their alignment with international capitalist systems. Right, again, zero-sum perspective. Frank's claim that the center develops only through the exploitation of the periphery. That in fact adopts a zero-sum view of global development, which critics argue is overly deterministic and neglect the possibilities of mutual gain through trade and cooperation. So that's another criticism. In fact, it's a zero-sum perspective. Okay, now what are the relevance? All this criticism will be there, but it is relevant. You need to talk about relevance. So it's a critique to global capitalism. It provides a valuable lens for understanding systemic inequalities in the global economic system. Then talk about empowering, dependency theory. So the Frank's work, in fact, laid the groundwork for dependence theories like Immanuel Wallerstein. We have discussed in detail about this theory, who expanded these ideas into world system theory. And then, path dependence and historical context. The Frank's emphasis on historical processes of exploitation, in fact, highlights the enduring legacies of colonialism and global economic systems. Okay, so if you see, again, Andre Gunder Frank's, now how to write the conclusion. See, this concept of development of underdevelopment theory, in fact, offers a radical critique of course, global capitalism by emphasizing the systemic exploitation of the periphery by the core, or the center by the periphery. Okay, so or developed by the or developing underdeveloped by developed. Okay, so it has been criticized for its deterministic outlook, or generalization, overgeneralization, or lack of nuanced internal analysis, but its contribution to dependency theory and criticism or critiques of global inequality still remains significant. So this is how you can conclude, or you can also add like understanding underdevelopment as a systemic, path-dependent process. In fact, highlight the need for equitable global economic reforms. So Frank theory does not offer a comprehensive solution, but it serves as a crucial foundation for further debates on development or inequality and justice in the global economic order. So this is how you can conclude this answer. So that's about this question, guys. And I hope this is a revision session, so I will not be able to discuss a complete theory as such, because this is your last chapter in paper one, and then a lot of things need to be discussed over there. Proceed. After this, you need to discuss about Immanuel Wallerstein world system theory also. So I hope this is very clear from the perspective of this particular question. The answers, the PDF and everything is given. You can check out the details in the description. You can download it free of cost. If you're looking for mentorship or any test series or course, you can again get in touch with us. If you like the video, share it with your friends. See you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much.